of the show for today. The topic is the implication of President Obama's election on the continent of Africa. And of course, Dr. LMadu has given a very, very interesting overview of some of the issues that the President of the United States of America, as well as other Western European countries, will have to face dealing with this continent. Let's continue our discussion here, Dr. LMadu.
Yeah, having laid down a background of what's happening now, what are the policies of the Obama government as far as Africa is concerned? That's what somebody will ask, and which is a very relevant question. Quite frankly, since the independence era, starting with the Belgian Congo, you know, when Patrice Lumumba was overthrown, you know, in a CIA-sponsored coup, the U.S. has never had what you call a coherent Africa policy.
There is no African policy.
No, it's not been any coherent, you know, concrete Africa policy.
Dealing with the continent of Africa.
Exactly. If this happens, that's what we'll do. None. It's been, you know, patchwork, hodgepodge, you know. Clinton tried, you know, when he was in government, and when Bush was in power, you know, he appropriated some money for AIDS in Africa, which of course was money that was cut from development aid to the poor countries. Anyway, okay. So now that Obama is in power, there's high expectations amongst the ordinary people and the, you know, the political class about what he's going to do for Africa. You know, it's funny. There's a story in Uganda now that President Museveni of Uganda is afraid because of Obama coming to power.
Oh, right.
You know, Obama's father comes from the Luo ethnic group in Kenya. And in Uganda, a sub-ethnic group called the Langi and the Acholi are linguistically related to the Luo in Kenya. And because Museveni has been perceived by these two ethnic groups in Uganda as against them, so they feel that since Obama
is not president, that
exactly, he will bring his you know, bear to bear on these people. But you know, it's a false assumption. However, that's kind of the expectation. Now, Obama and his spokespeople during the campaign articulated 3 cardinal principles on which they will deal with Africa. Okay? One is, you know, security for African nations. You know, 2 is coordination of actions concerning Africa with African leaders. In the past, we just did what we wanted and then informed the leaders, you know, without really getting their input. Exactly. And 3 is integrating Africa into the international economic system. Right now, it's like Africa is not part of that system.
Not part of the world, as
exactly,
a matter of fact.
Exactly. You have the G8 and all these. African leaders are invited as observers, not as part of the game. And what Obama wants to do, if he keeps to some of those, you know, principles, is to integrate the continent into the overall, you know, Africa, the scene. When you look at on TV, you never hear of the African Stock Exchange or the Stock Exchange in Abidjan. So you hear about the one in Tokyo and London, all this.
But Africa is an almost forgotten continent as well.
Exactly. It's not part of the economic system. You know, it's marginalized in that case.
In spite of all of the wealth that Africa has, Africa is not part of it.
Exactly. It's just a place to get raw materials, you know, and dump unwanted goods. So how is he going to, you know, operate insofar as Africa is concerned? Politically, you know, he has to push the issue of democratization. Make sure that leaders don't cling to power forever. For example, Mugabe has been there for almost 30 years, since 1980. Compaoré in Burkina Faso has been there since 1987. You know, Bongo has been in Gabon since 1967. So that's part of what he should do, is to pressure leaders to step down, you know, when their terms are due. And this ties into what? Human rights. Okay? A whole lot of African leaders are still violating rights of their people. And you cannot have stability when the rights of the ordinary people are being trampled. Sometimes they will revolt and there'll be a problem. For example, the government in Equatorial Guinea, you know, with all the money it has, it continues to repress its people. They feed prisoners sand and water in jail, in the famous Babi jail in Equatorial Guinea. So that's very important, you know, that leaders should stop, you know,
all the human rights
violations, you know, so that there can be peace and stability. Because when you don't have peace and stability, nobody wants to invest.
Okay.
You know, and that's very important for African countries to be stable. And it cannot be stable when people are always revolting against their leaders because of perceived or real oppression. That's very important. What has it got to do with economy? Okay, now we talk of the Middle East all the time.
All right.
I don't think if we have a coherent Africa policy based on sound economic judgment, the U.S. should worry about Middle East oil. Currently, the African nations supply more oil to the U.S. than Saudi Arabia. Most people don't know that. Okay, you have huge reserves of oil in Nigeria, in Equatorial Guinea, in Gabon, Congo Brazzaville, Sao Tome, Principe. You have oil there. Oil has just been discovered in Ghana. You have oil in Chad. Okay, so a coherent Africa policy, you know, based on economic, you know, justice and fair play. The U.S. can get all the oil it needs from Africa without worrying about the Middle East. That's very important. Obama is talking about economic, you know, energy independence. That's one way of having secure, you know, this in oil to the U.S. That's very important, you see. So that's some of what I think he should be looking at, you know, formulating an integrated, you know, African policy. And because of his background and the tremendous goodwill he has on that continent, he's in a position for a major transformation of policy in Africa without the, you know, constraints that were imposed on that other president might have had. So it's very important. You see?
So politically, he has an inroad there that no other president of United or no other world leader has ever had in terms of dealing with the whole continent. The French could probably deal with West Africa, I mean English with West, etc., and you could divide Africa up. But in terms of having one leader that can deal with the entire continent, have the support and the confidence, I believe, of the entire, he is the individual.
Exactly.
Would you say that he represents that?
He is well positioned more than any other leader. And of course, Dr. LMadu,
let us make preparations for the second commercial break. Then we'll come back and we'll have about 10 minutes to allow you to get into a greater discussion in reference to this. But I think that that's essentially what we're concerned about, and I think that this is something that has to be articulated because I don't think that you hear it on the radio, you don't hear it in the news or whatever. And as we both said, that Africa, it appears as if Africa is still what? The lost continent.
That's correct.
And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial.